What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today it's rainy outside, so I'm out here in my shed just kind of working on some projects I've had on my mind. I've got a bunch of these cheap pool noodles and I'm turning these right here, jugs for catfishing. Alright guys, so I've been wanting to build some catfish jugs for a while now. The hope is to get out, maybe do some camping and some jug fishing with my boy and family here, you know, in the next couple weeks or this summer. And I wanted to design something that was a little bit different, or at least something that I've never seen before. And the main goal was to make it cheap and simple and easy. So on that note, we're using the cheapest pool noodles that we could find. These came from Dollar General and they were $1 a piece. They're just short of 4 feet. So what I decided to do was divide the length into 3 and make 3 noodles out of each, 3 catfish noodles out of each swimming noodle. I have 4, so that should give me a total of 12. The total length all ended up coming up around 15 inches, a little more. And what I've come up with was this. So kind of my idea for how to make these whole things actually started, I've been thinking about this in my mind. This morning I actually installed a base into my boat and I had to use a hole saw to do so. The resulting circular piece of metal that came out of my boat fit perfectly on the end of these noodles. So I thought, well heck, that would be a pretty good way to attach line to your noodles. So what I did is I used that piece, that cookie if you want to call it that, and I put it on the end, put some epoxy and a couple screws, and then I was able to run my line through that hole. I left one of the screws sticking up just a little bit, and the other one I ran down on the end of the line that I tied off to it. The other screw will serve as my adjustment method. I can pull this excess line through the hole to shorten it, and then I can tie it off to this while I'm on the water to adjust my total depth. On the other end, you don't have to do anything, but I had a bunch of these little bitty pieces of PVC pipe laying around from another project, and this pipe fit perfectly in the end of this pool noodle. So what I did is I took all the little cut-offs, you know, there's some of them are 1 inch long, some of them are 2 inches long. Really, it doesn't matter. Probably at least 1 inch. But all I wanted to do was just insert that piece of pipe in the end, glue it in, so that way that string couldn't cut through the noodle when it got a fish on it. It just kind of adds a little rigidity to the end. And then finally, I make a whole bunch of these sinkers myself. I've got a bunch of lead, I've got a smelting pot and a mold. So I've got a bunch of these bank sinkers. So I tied a bank sinker off to the end. And then for my drops, I just tie loops in. And the great thing about this is you can tie these loops at whatever interval you want, depending on what depth you want your bait to sit above the bottom of the water. You could have multiple loops per jig. And then for my hook setup, I'm going to actually try using my trot line rigs, my trot line drops. So this has got one of those little quick release hooks on the end. It's got a swivel tied to a drop with a hook. So now while I'm on the water, all I got to do is hook it on there, let it go, and there's my drop. And I can put as many of those on that line as I want. I don't know how well that's going to work, but I'm going to give it a shot. So that's kind of the idea. One complete noodle there. I just wanted to kind of make a proof of concept before I got on here and started building them. But now that you've seen the complete product, I just want to run you through and actually build one so you can see how I go about it. And then, after we get them finished, hopefully we can get out on the water and test them out and see how they work. Alright guys, so to start things off building these noodles, like I said, it's about as simple as you can get. You take your noodle and you need to cut it. And like I said, I just divided the total length by 3 on these, so that way I wouldn't have any excess material. I'm going to measure that out just over 15 inches. Got a knife. and cut that dude in half. There we go. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little piece of PVC pipe. I'm going to put some glue on it. Now, epoxy would probably be your best bet for this. I'm just using some old plumbing glue because I've got it and it really needs to be used. It's kind of going bad on me. So I just want to kind of, rotate that in. And you probably want to leave it sticking out just a little bit. It probably doesn't matter. And again, the only point of that is just to keep from that line from tearing in the side of the noodle when a catfish grabs onto it and goes to pulling under and running and doing everything else. Hopefully it'll add to the longevity of these noodles. So there's that. I'm going to set that aside for a second. Okay, on that first noodle I used the little cookie piece that came out of the hole saw from putting the boat pedestal in my boat. I don't have any more of that metal stuff. I'm not going to go cut a bunch of holes in my boat. So what I've got is just an old piece of thin plywood, and I'm going to cut my end caps out of this. So let's get one. Alright, so there's our little cookie, and it's the perfect size end cap for these noodles. Now, depending on what size noodles you buy, they may be bigger diameter, but the thing is, this doesn't have to be the perfect size if you don't have the perfect size hole saw the same diameter as your noodle. It can be a little bit smaller. The whole point here is it gives you something to affix your line to so it won't pull through that pull noodle hole. So as long as it's big enough to spread over the end of that noodle, then it ought to work just fine. So I grabbed a little wood rasp, and I'm just going to clean these edges up so that way we won't get any splinters. That looks a little better. I think we'll call that good. Okay, so the next step in this process is I want to go ahead and put me 2 screws in here. One of them I'll use to permanently attach my line to the very end, and the other one will be for adjusting the depth. I just want to start the screws in the wood because once I'm actually going to screw them into this pull noodle. Now they're not going to do much holding on their own, but in addition to that, I'm going to put a little bit of the epoxy in between here, so that way, hopefully it helps hold this end cap in place. So let's put a couple screws in it. Okay, I got my screws started into our end plate, but before I go any further, I want to go ahead and run my line through this noodle. It's going to be much easier to get the line through it now than try to fit it through this little hole. So I'm just using your standard nylon string. I think this came from Walmart in the fishing section. It's typically the same size I'd use for my drops on my trot lines, and I've got a bunch of it. So that's the reason why I'm using it. As far as depth, you can make them as long as you want. I'm just going to kind of guess. My wingspan is probably around 6 foot. So I'm going to make them around, I don't know, 20 foot or so. So there's probably 12. We're going to say that's 18. I'm going to give it another pull. So that ought to get us over 20 foot. Cut that off. And I'm going to run this through my jug, starting from the side that we glued our PVC pipe in. Okay, now that I've got my line through, I'm going to just tie the, guys, I'm not real good on my knot names, but it's just a slip knot type. You just make a loop, you push the line back through it, and you pull it tight so it'll tighten up on itself. And you want it to tighten up, so if you put your finger on it and you pull on the main line with the tag in, it's going to slip closed. So that way when it pulls tight, it can't come off these screws. Don't forget to put your line through your end plate first, and you want to come through from the bottom side and out the top. The top's going to be your screw side. So now then, let's do this again. Let's make my slip knot one more time. Again, you want to tighten. When you pull the main line, you want to tighten onto your screw. And for this, it doesn't matter which side. I'm just going to pick one of my screws, put my line on it, and tighten it up. Okay, so that's there. Next thing I'm going to do, pull my excess through. I'm going to smear a little bit of epoxy on the end here of this pull noodle. Okay, now then I just want to pull my line through, try to keep the epoxy off of it. I just want to set that cap on there, maybe pull on the line a little bit, like that. Now I'm going to tighten these screws into the noodle. Okay, and now the screw that had our end of our line tied off to it, I actually tightened that screw down onto that line, so it should not go anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and cut my tag into my line. There we go. Alright y'all, so I just realized I made a mistake on this one. Can anybody pick out what it was? That's right. So I tightened my screw down on my main line. That was the correct thing to do. But I should not have tightened this other screw all the way down. I want it to stick out a little bit so that way I can adjust my main line. So I'm going to back that out just a hair. About like that. Should be plenty. Now then I can pull this main line out here. I can make me a little slip knot and slip it over there to set my depth. There we go. Now this jug is pretty much complete. The only thing left to do is to tie your weight to the end. Like I said, I'm using these little bank sinkers because I got a bunch of them. Make them myself. I'm just going to tie that on the very end of my line. You can tie whatever sort of knot you want. It don't matter. Like I said, I'm not a knot expert. Do whatever makes you comfortable. There we go. I've got my sinker tied on. Now then you can just tie your loops wherever you want them. And the great thing about this is there's no limit to how many loops you can have. Or, you know, how often you change them. You can untie these, you can move them, you can do whatever you want, depending on what the fish are doing. So I'm just going to tie that kind of loose, about like that. And then my catfish drop, or my trot line drop, will just hook right on there when I'm ready to fish. Now just on these drops, I'm not going to go into making them. You can buy these little clips at Walmart or wherever. I've just got a normal little swivel on them. I just take and tie these, I don't know, this is probably about 6 inches. So you take a 12-inch piece, you double it over, tie a knot in the end to put on your swivel side, and then you put your hook on the other side. These here are pretty beat up. I really need to make some new ones, but they'll work for now. I'll give you a close-up of that. Alright y'all, that's pretty much it on these noodles. The only thing I've got left to do is to wrap it up. I am going to get some reflective tape to put around the top of these things for fishing at night. And then I'll write my information on it. And depending on what state you're in, what information you put in your noodles may vary. Here in Arkansas, we just have to have something that identifies us, whether that's your license number or driver's license number or name and address and whatnot, or license plate number. So I'm going to do that before we fish with these. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get to work, knock all these dudes out so that we have them. And that hopefully the next part of this video we'll be fishing. Alright y'all, we got our jugs out here. I'm going to go ahead and get them all set out. So we've got our weights tied on here, and I'm just gonna toss that weight in and let the line unspool. It's actually deeper here than what the line is, so I'm just gonna let it go all the way. I'm gonna pull the line back in. Probably should have hooked my drop on before I dropped it in the water, but anyways, I'm just going to take this line, use my little clip, hook that on there. I'm going to set it, so it's a little bit above the bottom, about like that. Now I'm going to bait up. We're going to chunk it in the water. There's one. Let's get the rest of them set up. Alright, so here's an example. Here, it's shallower than our line is long. So I'm just going to kind of let that go to the bottom. I'm going to pull it up, pull all my slack out that I need. Then I'll just tie me that little loop in the end, whatever depth I want. Hook it over that there, pull it tight, then let it go. Now I just left all my slack just hang loose. If you wanted to, you could wrap that up, but it really don't matter, so I'm just gonna let it go. Alright, I'm gonna get the rest of these out, and then I'll let you know when we start catching anything. Got some weight on it. Got one. All right. Look at that. I need a bigger net. Uh-oh. He's about to come out. Woo! Right there's a big cat, man. Well, the jugs work. Look at that. Right there's a good one. He probably 6 pounds. Oh yeah. I can see this one up here. It's the last one. It's dancing around good, man. It's got to have a good fish on it. It's bobbing up and down, dancing all around. See it right there? Whoop, all the way under. Look at there. Gotta be a good one. Daggum, boy. That sucker went down deep. Time I pulled up to it, it went down. I looked and it was probably as far down as I can see in this water. It's at least 6 feet deep. It's gonna go shoot back under. There it goes. I got it though. Okay. Catfish. Want to hauss them up here too hard. Oh yeah, good little channel cat. Whew. Get in the net. There it is. Well, at least the jugs work. I was a little worried after last night. That right there will do too. That'll do just fine. Nice channel cat. Well, Noodles work. Out of 12 that were out last night, there were fish on 4 of them. One of them was a bullhead, and another one got off, so I was trying to get in the boat. So we got 2 nice catfish. I say nice, I mean they're good ones. So they do work. I think they just work better at night, which is when catfish are most active feeding anyway. I sure am happy we caught some though. I'm gonna have a little fish fry at the house on Sunday for Mother's Day. So those 2 fish plus some I've got frozen ought to be plenty to feed us.